Welcome back, csc121, spring 2020, to ex12 function intro using test input. And what we first did was just do it the normal way without a function. Then we created a function, and we put everything in a function. We even printed inside the function so that when we called the function, we could print it out. And then the last thing we did was we held the result of the function call. We're returning score from the function. That's what's getting returned, the 80 or whatever numbers we add in there, whatever's getting returned is getting held as the fruit of the function call, and result is going to hold that, and then we're going to print result. And something else we can do, this won't affect the result, this will affect the way we input it. And one thing we could do, instead of doing regular input, even though that makes sense to input it, I just want to demonstrate how arguments and parameters work. Now, instead of holding these as variables waiting for input, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put pp, comma, ep. I'm going to put the variables up there, and they're going to be held as parameters, meaning when you call the function, they're going to want actual values to be put in there. So I'm going to get rid of this. So we're not going to input anything. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to say pp. And notice we're still using ep divided by pp in here. Now, where are these variables getting declared? We could declare them as variables, as global variables, and then send them in. But what we're going to do is actually kind of give them to the function call on the fly. It's kind of like in football, changing the play at the line of scrimmage. We're going to kind of do that. So when we could still keep the bottom like this. We're still going to have the calc score here, and we're still returning our values. So we're still doing that. But what we're going to do here is we're going to send in arguments. These are going to be the arguments, and they're going to go to the parameters. These are sometimes called the actual parameters. These are sometimes called the formal parameters. But for what we do, we're going to call these the arguments and these the parameters. And they kind of work like local variables, because remember, pp was whatever we entered. So I'm going to say pp equals 10, and then I'll put a comma, and we'll say ep equals 8, because those were the numbers we were using. So in a sense, we're saying we're almost declaring local variables that say pp equals 10 and ep equals 8. And we're going to basically use them when the function gets run. So when this function gets run, it's going to supply 10 in there, it's going to supply 8 in here, and then it's going to run this, and it's going to go 8 divided by 10 times 80 times 100 and get 80, or whatever it comes out to be, and then it's going to round it off, and then it's going to return it, and then it's going to print it back just like we did the first time. So this should happen almost immediately. It won't be too exciting, but this is what happens. And it says your score is 80. So there's no input here. We're actually sending it. So if you wanted to figure out if you had 20 and 18, if they got an 18 out of 20 on the exercise, and we'll run it. Their score is 90. And what if they got a 19 out of 20? And what if they got something out of a 45? Here we got a 45, and they got a 37 out of 45. What is that? Well, again, these are possible points. We're sending them in as possible points. We're sending in the argument in place of the parameter. The parameter is basically a placeholder, and it's acting like a local variable, except it doesn't have its value until the function is called. Then when the function is called, it gets its value and says, oh, okay, pp equals 45, ep equals 37. It's almost like doing this. It's almost like if you did this. You could almost do this. It's almost like doing that and sending it in like that. Now, I'm not sure if you need a number in here. I'm just curious if we can do this, if that'll still work. Oh, that still works. See, you're kind of doing both here by putting them in there, and here you're sending them on the fly. So you can actually do that. So that's kind of what it's doing. It's setting local variables to represent those things as we do them, but it's actually better to do it kind of like this. It's better to put them in here, in with the function call, because then you kind of know what you're doing, because it doesn't make any sense to set the variables in there, even though you can do that. But I just did that just to kind of indicate what's happening. It's kind of working like that. But again, we're just using the pp and the ep as our variable names that are kind of holding a place for whatever we send to it. And you could have as many of these as you want, as long as you have the same number. As long as if you have 3 arguments, you should have 3 parameters to hold them. We'll use that with the turtle exercises when we send them a bunch of parameters, when we do things with turtles like colors and positions and all kinds of things like that. But let's run this again just to make sure it works. And there it is. Your score is 82. So this is using an argument, or 2 arguments, and this is using 2 parameters. And we're going to be doing that more with functions. And again, the important thing here is that we're returning a value. And that value is being returned from the function call, and then it's printed out. So that's part 2 of our intro to functions, and we're going to do more with that as we follow the execution of functions.